Well, good morning, Tabor College, and welcome to a new year. I am wondering, where are the freshmen at? Would you stand up if you're a freshman? Would you all welcome them? You had thousands of choices. You chose Tabor, the right one. Thank you for coming. How about sophomores? Anybody come back? All right. You came back. We're proud of you. Thank you. It's a tough year, but pretty soon it's over. How about juniors? Where are juniors? Yeah. You know, you're over the hump. You're on your way home. And seniors. Where are the seniors? Yay! You know, in just a few months, you're going to be walking across the stage and getting this diploma. And then you're out into life, and you are ready for the life. And so we're glad that you're all here, and we're looking forward to the coming year. Oh, aren't you freshmen, sophomores, juniors, or seniors? We got to teach them something, right? Transfer, stand up. All freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and senior transfers. Welcome. By the way, you're really a sophomore, a junior, or a senior. So we don't want you to take your classes all by yourselves. I want to share a little bit with you about my story. And I want to share my story with the hope that it will inspire you to think about your story and also how his story fits into it. Your life is a book. It's like a book. There will be some chapters in it that are sad and disappointing. And there will be some chapters in it that are happy and glad and full of joy. And there are some chapters in it that will be exciting and thrilling. And there are some chapters that will be just routine, maybe even boring. But unless you turn the page, unless you open the book and you begin to write in that, you will never know what God has in store for you. And all of you came here, and as you started college, you opened your book, and you're writing a new chapter. And those of you who are returning, you are starting to write more in that chapter. And it might even be a new chapter because of experiences that you had in the summer. Or there are these moments in our lives that somehow something intervenes and reaches out and touches us, and we say, oh, I've got to write a new chapter. And so we do. And our life continues to be written. And so you are writing the book of your life, and I want to invite you to have his story be a part of your life. I'm going to share with you this morning some of the stories from my book, because one of the things that I've learned is that all of the experiences and responsibilities that I've had throughout my year always have somehow prepared me for the next piece in my life, and the next role, and the next responsibility. And each chapter of your life prepares you for the next. And each one shapes you into a kind of person that you want to be and that God wants you to be. So I went to a high school of about 130 people. There were 33 in my class. It was the largest class that had ever been in Emory High School. I begged my parents to not make me go to high school. I hated school. I didn't want to go. All I wanted to do was stay home and farm. My dad had 6 weeks of high school. That was all. So why would I need anything more than that? Don't make me go to high school. And I know why I didn't want to go, and I know why I hated school. Because I had a teacher in the 7th and 8th grade that would literally slug me. He would, whenever we misbehaved, all of us, not just me, but I seemed to misbehave more than the rest, it seemed. He would make his fist like this, bring his knuckles back, and come up behind you unsuspectingly and whack you over the back of your head. And it hurt. and I didn't like it. And then sometimes he would come and we'd face right in front of you, and the first time he went out like this, and he caught me on my jaw and just whacked me across. And then after that, the next time he came, I got smart, and I saw his fist coming, and I ducked, and then he just scratched his head. And he laughed at me that he had faked me out, supposedly. Now, in today's world, he would be in prison for abuse. But back then, it wasn't like that. I didn't tell my parents because then I'd just get another one. And so that was what high school was for me. I remember in my either sophomore or junior year, whichever year you're supposed to take algebra, I walked into the algebra class expecting to take it, and Mr. Cheddar stood up, the teacher, and he says, "The following students I don't want in my class." And I was one of them. Okay with me. So I walked out of the class, walked down to the principal's office and said, "Where would you like me to go to school?" I really didn't want to be there, remember? And he said, "Well, why don't you come with me here and I'll take you." And they took me literally across the hall, and I started taking business courses. I took typing, accounting, public speaking, different kinds of skill courses that I use to this very day. I am so thankful for Mr. Cheddar and that he directed me out of his class. And already back then, God saw where my life was going, and he knew that I would need those kind of skills, and I began to learn them and hone them at a very early age. Then it came time for graduation, and I said, "Well, I'm fine. I've already accomplished this." My parents said, "No, you need to go to college, at least 1 year." I said, "Where should I go?" It was no decision for me. It didn't really matter to me. And she said, "Well, why don't you go to Tabor College?" Okay. So we packed up and came down here, and I went to Tabor College. My first year wasn't really all that great a year, except for one thing. I became part of this singing group called The Commitment. And we would go to youth groups, church youth groups, and to high schools and to different places and sing in chapel and do things like that. And it was really enjoyable. But we had one particular event. We were invited to sing at a place in Minneapolis, Minnesota, at a convention called Probe 72. It was a little over 2,000 people that gathered there, and they talked about different people who had given their lives for their faith. And I remember hearing the story of 3 individuals, Felix Montz, George Blaurock, and Conrad Grable, and how these young men in their 20s were drowned for their faith and their commitment to Jesus Christ. And I remember sitting there and hearing that, and I kind of chuckled to myself, and I go, oh, and one of the men that when they pulled him from the river, they discovered that he had a map, a strategy to evangelize the world. And I remember thinking to myself, well, they would never find anything like that on my life, on my body, and I'm not interested in doing that kind of thing. And suddenly there was this arresting voice in my head. It wasn't an audible voice, but it arrested me in my mind, in my head, and it posed a question. And the question was this: Jules, do I have all of you? And I was kind of shocked and stunned by it. And my response was, well, no, you don't. And the voice came back and said, I want all of you. And as I think back of that moment, it seems to me like it was a defining moment of my life. Because it was kind of like, if I don't say yes to this, I'm going to lose out to a lot, but do I really want to? And I just respond by saying, sure, okay, Lord, you can. That experience set my life on a completely different trajectory. I came back here, and things just seemed to be different. And I began to continue on in the next 2 years, and my grades started getting better, and I started attending all the classes that I was supposed to attend and changed my lifestyle a little bit, and all of those, I actually changed it a lot. And then we got married, and just, everything and it came to graduation, and I said, God has called me, it seems to me, to be a pastor, but I got to learn some more about this because I don't know very much. So I ended up going to seminary in Fresno, California. Now, their school was fun, and that was a lot of fun. I mean, I got to study the Bible, I got to study theology, I got to study preaching, I got to study psychology in a different way and counseling. I learned why people act the way they do and why they do stupid things, and I learned why I act the way I do. And that was really insightful to me as I examined myself, and in some ways I kind of found myself and who I was during that whole experience. While I was at seminary, I kept growing and I kept learning, and it was just always expanding, and it was just so much fun to be doing that. After seminary, one quick year in San Jose where I did an internship at a church, and then to Western Kansas, 4 years serving there as a pastor in Ulysses, Kansas, and then off to Houston, Texas, where, yes, yay Houston. Off to Houston, Texas, where for the next 19 years, I served as a church planter and as a pastor. I knew no one in Houston when we went except a few casual acquaintances and when we had studied the city. Other than that, and we were there to start a church. And now I live in Hillsboro, Kansas. 4 million people, 400 people, no, 4,000, just under 4,000. What I've learned is that there's only two things that Houston and Hillsboro have in common. They both start with the letter H, and I'm probably the only person who lived more than 15 years in both of them. While I was in Houston, I found myself having a lot of responsibilities that were beyond what I felt I was able to do. And I thought, I need to learn some more. I need to learn some more about leadership. And so because seminary had been such a great experience for me, I said, I'm going to go back to seminary. And so I, Fuller Theological Seminary, enrolled there and did all my work to receive my doctorate. I had everything done, had done the research for my dissertation, and I said, this is good. I've learned everything. I don't need to write this all out just to be put on a shelf someplace. I'm done with school now, and I'm going to continue to practice what I've learned. And then I was on a solitude and silence retreat in West Texas. About every 6 months or a year, I would do that, just get away from everybody. And I was in West Texas, in the edge of the Texas of hill country, and really hot summer afternoon, laying in a hammock. Just kind of being myself. I did these solitude and science retreats so I could focus more on being rather than doing. Most of my life was doing, and so I'd pull away just to be and to just recover. And while I'm laying there in that hammock, there's this arresting voice which comes again in my head. And this time, it's a very clear statement of action. Before that, it hadn't really been like that. They were more question-oriented, but this one is, go back and finish your dissertation for the work I've called you to. I didn't know what to do with that, except that voice had been trustworthy before, so I probably should listen to it again. And so I did. I went back, I finished my dissertation. Little did I know, without any idea, that in just another year and a half, that this place called Portland, Oregon, and George Fox Evangelical Seminary would call me to be a part and to lead the seminary. That was a very positive experience for me. And then one day, my administrative assistant comes to the door and says, there's a phone call from you that I think you should take right away. It's some guy named David Wiebe, and he says he's from Tabor College. And I said, what does he want? And he says, he didn't say, but it seems like you should take it. So I was in the midst of a project, just pushed it away and took the call. That conversation led to 3 more months of conversation, and then came the invitation to come and serve at Tabor as its president. As soon as we heard that, Peg and I went to the coast to our favorite kind of getaway right on the coast overlooking the Pacific Ocean in Cannon Beach. And we went there and we just pulled away for 2 or 3 days. During that time, I found myself kind of reevaluating and rethinking all the different aspects of my life, all of the different responsibilities that I had. And it was all of the different chapters that had been in my life. And as I paged through my life and thought about all of them, something became clear, that all of them had prepared me for the next step. And that all the different chapters of my life somehow had kind of fit into what I was being asked to do here. Now, and I remember sitting beside the fireplace that was there, and it was cold and dreary and outside like the coast always is in Florida. And again, there was this arresting voice, and this time it was a question. And the question was, do you want to live a God-arranged life, or do you want to live a self-arranged life? And I thought to myself, I think the God-arranged life is a little bit better than the self-arranged life. What I've seen of the self-arranged life usually doesn't lead to a lot of good things. The God-arranged, you never know what's next. You never know where he's going to take you or how he's going to lead you. And I also realized at that moment that there was another experience that I had had when I was 9 years old with my grandma. The church that I attended growing up was in the country. And every year they would have these 2 weeks of what they called revival meetings. Every night, all the people would stop their summer work and would gather at the church, and we would have a guest speaker who would come in and who would speak and explain the Bible to us. And that particular night, the speaker talked about hell and talked about forgiveness and talked about salvation and a variety of different things like that. And I was sitting with my parents. That means I had misbehaved the night before when I was sitting in the front. So I was sitting right beside him, and then he said, anybody who wants to come forward and hear more about this and ask Jesus into your life, would you come forward? And I looked at my mom and I said, Mom, I think I want to do that. And she said, okay, go. So I went forward and they explained to me that everybody had sinned and that we all had fallen short and that Jesus Christ was there to forgive us. And if we prayed and asked him to come into our life, that he would. I did that. I'm only 9 years old. But walking to the car, what I remember is that I was whistling and skipping to the car, and I wasn't a whistler and a skipper, except that's what I remember as I walked to the car. I came home. Grandma hadn't gone to church that night for some reason. She must have been deathly sick at that point already. Anyway, I ran into her room, shook her, woke her up from a dead sleep, and I said, Grandma, guess what? I asked Jesus into my heart. And Grandma, who was a heavyset German lady, got up, sat down at the edge of the bed, took a doily from her nightstand and put it on her head because Grandma never prayed without a covering on her head, made me kneel down in front of her, laid her hands on me, and prayed. I don't know what she prayed. I really wish I would know what it is that she said. I won't until I get to the other side. But this I am convinced of. Whatever she prayed that night has continued to be answered throughout my life. And I realized sitting in the Oregon coast that day that all of the experiences of my life somehow had been triggered at that point, and God had kind of woven them all together, all the way to where I was now at the point that I was saying yes to an assignment that I had no clue how to do. And even to this day, after almost 12 years of doing it, still say, I don't know quite how to do this, God. You're going to have to help me with it. This is where I came from. This is the farm that I thought I would take over, that I would farm and live for the rest of my life. But when I go back there today to that place, all it is just bare land. Everything has been destroyed, and all that's there is land that has continued to be farmed. This is the family that I grew up with. My mom and dad worked all their life so that when they would be later on in life, in their mid-60s, they would be able to begin to travel and see the world. They hadn't seen the world, and they would like to see it. And about the time that they were able to do that and started and made one trick, Mom got sick, discovered she had breast cancer, and 3 months later she died. They never got to do what they had lived their entire life to do. I share that part of the story with you because those experiences of a farm that is no longer there and of parents that weren't able to do what they had lived for to do has placed in me this sense of here and there. And it's true for all of us. It's true for you as well. We live here in this world right now, and it is temporal. But we live and we work and we try to make this world the best that it can be, to make it the way God intended it to be when He created it. But there's also this there that's out there. There is this other place, this eternal perspective that kind of influences what we do here. And we do here always with the vision and the values of the there coming and influencing the here. And then we work here with the hope that what we do here kind of takes things, pays them forward to the there. And in our society today of instant, we don't always think in terms of here and there. It's only now, and it's only instant. But the truth is there is a there, and there is a now, and heaven is for real. And so we live now in this world with our eyes set on the future, and we know that the future is also impacting what it is that we do now. Live not only for today, but live for eternity. So what's your story? What will be the next chapter of your life? I can tell you this. When Jesus said, I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life, He is asking to be a part of your story. He is the way. Not that He's going to show the way, but He is it. And He is the truth. He is the one that uncovers for us all of that which is hidden, which we do not know. And He is life. He created it. He sustains it. He takes it. He gives it. He is life. And we find that in Him. And when we weave what He has done into our story and we bring it all together, we can live a God-arranged life. We can live a life with purpose. And as you begin this year, I want to challenge every one of you to think about where is your life heading? And who is involved in your life? And if Jesus isn't a part of your life, would you give Him at least a shot? Would you say, okay, what would it mean if He would start entering into your life? Do you want to live your own life and arrange it your own way? You're free to do that. Or do you want to live a God-arranged life? And somehow have all the things that have happened in your past somehow shape who you are and prepare you for the next chapter, and for the next chapter, and for the next chapter. Because you see, someday, the book is going to be closed. And you will be there, wherever there is. until that time, how do you want to live your life? College is a time to take a good hard look at that and write that chapter in your book. I encourage you to consider how Jesus might be a part of that. You've been a great audience. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your attention. God bless you.